So let's start sitting down first. And if you have and things that you might find useful, you might find blocks useful if you like using them and you have blocks. You might find a cushion useful. If you have a cushion and you find yourself in the past using a cushion, but if you do have a cushion, maybe prop your hips up on a cushion and see if you can just find a comfortable way to sit. Maybe start by closing your eyes for just a moment and starting to notice how you're feeling. So we've already established that we're kind of like middle to low energy, probably. And maybe check in with your body, just noticing, like, is there anywhere that's calling your attention? Maybe you're feeling creaky somewhere. Maybe you're feeling nice and limber somewhere. And then notice how you're breathing naturally. So maybe you're breathing pretty deeply. Maybe you're breathing more shallowly. Are your breaths smooth or rough? And then what would it be like to take a really deep inhale through your nose if possible? But if you're congested, through your mouth is fine. So maybe take a really deep breath in and sigh it out through your mouth. Maybe do that a couple of times. And then drop your chin towards your chest. And you can keep your eyes closed for this, but if you want to open them, that's fine. And then draw your chin up towards one of your shoulders. Then lower it back down. Moving pretty slowly, draw a couple of these arcs, go back up toward your other shoulder. I was going to say a different shoulder. That makes it sound like you've got all kinds of shoulders. And then just kind of draw these little smiles, checking in with your neck to see what's going on in your neck today. How is your neck feeling? And if you want to turn these little arcs into circles, you might continue drawing that arc up and over into a circle. And if you're drawing circles, maybe reverse and go the other way. And then come back to center. And just kind of move your neck around gently. Notice if there's any cracking and popping. And if your eyes are closed, you can go ahead and open your eyes. And take a moment, if you are just opening your eyes, to actually turn your head and look around the room. Maybe start to deepen your breath just a little more than you naturally would breathe. And then begin to round through your back, drop your chin to your chest, and come into a gentle cat pose, a seated cat pose, Marjarasana. You can move around a little bit here. You can do anything you want with your hands. Maybe you have your hands on your knees. Maybe you just have them kind of reaching forward. And when you're ready, come into a cow pose. So arching through your back, maybe tipping your chin up. You might bring your hands behind you and find just a little back bend. Maybe it gets a little deeper, and you might find some movement here as well. So it doesn't have to look like anything in particular, but see if you can make it useful. So maybe you're a little stiff from stretching, from sleeping, and you want to stretch a little bit. And then move between cat and cow at your own pace. Really leaning into noticing how you're feeling, what would feel good right now, what would feel useful right now. And Mark and I were talking this morning, and one of the things that I was thinking was maybe today we just make decisions that make sense, make decisions that are kind. So as we move throughout practice, you get to decide how to move. You get to decide how much effort to put in, how much rest to take, but really just make sure you're thinking about how you're moving in a way that makes sense, moving in a way that's kind to you. So maybe for you, doing a lot more today would be great. Maybe doing a lot less would be great. Finish up those cat cows and then come on down onto your back. And once you're lying on your back, come into constructive rest pose with your feet on the floor, knees bent. Lift your arms up and take a look at your hands. Then you can wiggle your digits and rotate your wrists. Notice if there's any cracking and popping. And then rotate in the opposite direction. And then give your arms a little bit of a shake. Bring your hands down. You can do anything you want with your arms. Maybe you bring them alongside your body. Pull your knees in and lift your legs up, and do the same thing with your legs. So I'm wearing socks, so you can't see my toes wiggling, but wiggle your toes and then rotate your ankles. And then rotate them in the opposite direction. And then give your legs a little bit of a shake. And bring them back down into constructive rest pose. Once you're in constructive rest, you might take a peek at your thighs and notice, are they naturally about hip width apart and parallel, which is what I usually say when we're coming into bridge, which we're going to do. If they are, that's great. If they're not, are they comfortable where they are? You get to decide where you want to place your legs today, where you want to place your feet. But start to tuck your tail a little and then slowly roll your spine up until you're about one long line from your knees down to your shoulders, and then slowly roll back down. And keep moving like that. You can add a little bit of a pelvic tilt at the bottom if that feels good. So you'd be kind of creating a little bit of an arch underneath your low back and then dropping it back down. But moving pretty slowly. Try these rolling bridges. Setu Bandha Sarvangasana. Once you've done a couple of those, the next time you find yourself up in your bridge, pause there and notice, are you clenching anywhere? Maybe check in with your jaw, your shoulders, and your neck. Can you relax anywhere? And if you can't, that's fine, but just notice if anywhere is clenching. And then check in with your feet. And from here, maybe lift all your toes. And notice when that happens, are you pressing down a little more through your big toe mounds, pinky toe mounds? Possibly that usually creates a little bit of an arch there or strengthens it. And then spread your toes and drop them down and keep that activation in your feet. And without moving your feet, isometrically squeeze them towards your body. So they're not going to move, but that kind of pulling energy or pulling action may engage through your the backs of your legs, your hamstrings. They're called hamstrings. Your hamstrings, and maybe through your glutes. It might change the way it feels in this posture. And even as you're doing that, can you soften anywhere else? And can you breathe pretty freely? And then as you're ready, roll your spine back down. And whatever you feel like doing here is fine. Maybe you widen your feet and try a few windshield wipers. Maybe you pull your knees into your chest. Whatever feels right. Awesome. From here, bring your feet together. So the soles of your feet, press them together and allow your knees to come out to the side. So you're in Supta Baddha Konasana, or reclined bound angle. Actively press your feet together. And then see what would it be like to press your feet down into the ground. So the sides of your feet, the pinky toe sides of your feet will be pressing down into the ground. And you can stay right here, or if this feels stable to you and if you don't have any issues with your ankles rolling, you might try lifting your hips up off the floor into sort of a hybrid of bound angle and bridge pose. And if you do that, maybe notice, how does that intensify any of the sensations you're feeling in this posture? And again, making decisions that make sense and are kind. If your hips are lifted, you can lower them back down. And then pull your knees in towards your chest and maybe rock from side to side just a little bit. And then make your way up to seated again. And once you're seated, bring your hands a little bit behind you for some support and slide your left heel forward a little bit. So when you do that, your pelvis is going to kind of tilt laterally, and then pull it back and slide your right heel forward a little. And try that a few times, just sliding each heel forward, noticing that kind of lateral tilt that happens in your hips or pelvis. And notice, how does that feel? If it feels terrible, you don't have to do it. If it hurts, you don't have to do it. If it feels okay, cool. Remember that for later. And then if you would like to prop your hips up on a pillow, go ahead and do that and come into a wide-legged seat. So it doesn't have to be super wide, but what for you feels like a wide-legged position. And I often here will say, you can bend your knees, focus on sitting up tall, but maybe this time bring your hands behind you for support and really press down through your knees, really engaging through your legs. And you can lean back as far as makes this doable for you. Flex through your feet, and as much as you can, straighten through your legs and really engage your legs. So again, pressing down through your knees. And if that feels like, yeah, this is great, I have lots of space, and you want to come up a little higher, you can come up a little higher, but only if you're not forcing that to happen. And if it feels like you have even more space and you would like to continue folding your body, hinging from your hips, you might try that. But if you're finding that you can no longer press down with your legs, that you can no longer keep that engagement in your legs, you can stay right here. You can stay right here. Really decide for you today what is kind for you and what makes sense. So you might feel a pretty intense stretch, and maybe you don't feel an intense stretch, but whatever you're feeling, can you breathe pretty freely? Often our breath can be a gauge of whether or not we're finding a balance between effort and ease, which is what we want to do during practice. So you're in Upavishta Konasana, or wide-legged forward fold. Seated, wide-legged forward fold. As you're ready, you can unfold yourself if you're folded forward and make your way into a tabletop from here on hands and knees. So once you're in tabletop, if you find that your knees are unhappy in tabletop and we're going to be putting more pressure on them, you might take a cushion and place it underneath your knees. Extend your right leg out to the side. And then walk your hands back and lift your body up into a tall kneeling position. And from here, notice, like, how does that feel in your hip? Normally, when people come into gait, which is what we're going to do, they say, line your foot up with your knee. And for many people, that's not great. So scooching their foot a little bit forward from where their knee is works a little better. So you decide there what feels better to you. And then lift up through your left arm, stretch up through that side body, and maybe lean towards your extended leg. And if keeping your arm up like this doesn't feel great, you can bring it down to whatever degree feels right. Again, making decisions based on how you're feeling, what makes sense and what is kind. And you can stay here, or another option would be lifting your other arm and then using your core to lift your body up and then back down. And this might feel good. It might feel like, yeah, I can feel my core working. It might feel like, oh, my back doesn't like this. And if your back is talking to you and saying, what are you doing? This might be the option that you skip. And then another thing to check in with here is, normally we keep our body open to the front. Our hips are open to the front. Our chest is open to the front. What would it feel like to turn a little bit so we kind of start closing through our chest, closing it towards the ground? What would that feel like? Can you still feel something like a stretch along your side body? What does that feel like? And you can be still or moving. So I'm giving you a lot of choices today. When you're ready, you can come back to center and switch sides. So maybe you bring your hands down, pull that leg in, and send the other one out. And then come back up to your tall kneeling position. And again, on this side, decide where you want that leg. So maybe your extended leg is in line with your knee. Maybe it's a little forward. When you're ready, if you'd like to stretch up through your outer arm and maybe lean towards that extended leg to see what can you feel through your outer side body. And again, as you're here in gate or parigasana, what does it feel like to keep your chest open to the front, kind of in line with your hips? And what does it feel like to turn a little bit? You might find some place that for you feels like the right place to be, feels like where you want to draw the line and say, yeah, this is my gate today. And then if you would like to lift your other arm and try these moving side bends, maybe you try that. When you're ready, come back to center.